What's going on, car family? I'm Ben Wayne, and thank you for joining me in another video. Today, we're taking a look at the GMC Arcadia AT4. This one is coming in at $60,000 as shown. It's going up against the likes of the Kia Telluride and the Hyundai Palisade. So today, let's take a quick look. This one is finished in a black lemon pepper seasoning. Since this is spring in Georgia, there's absolutely nothing I could do about all this pollen, so I didn't even bother. But as you can see, this is much larger than the previous generation of the Arcadia, roughly 10 inches longer in length, and overall length of 203 inches. And since this is the AT4 model, we have additional ground clearance as well. You're looking at about 7.75 inches of ground clearance. So let's start off at the front. Of course, we have LED everything. You'll notice this design language. We've seen that on some GMC vehicles we reviewed previously. We have red tow hooks. And then, of course, we have a skid plate, since this is the AT4 model. Now, we have a dark chrome, since this is the AT4. So if this was the Denali, you'd have a bright chrome trim. Please excuse the rain. We have a storm coming in. Let's take a look underneath the hood real quick. So underneath the hood, we have a transversely mounted 2.5-liter 4-cylinder power plant that gives us about 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque, connected to an 8-speed transmission. Your fuel economy is 19 city, 24 highway. 0 to 60, you're getting in roughly 7.2 seconds. All right. But overall, it looks really good from the front, in my opinion. Definitely love the red tow hooks. Let's take a quick look at the side profile and try and hurry it up since it's raining. So first things you'll notice are the 18-inch wheels with the all-terrain tires. These are Goodyears. Again, this is the AT4 trim designed for off-road capability. So of course it's off-road, all-wheel drive. I love these amber side markers on the side here. That looks pretty cool. Blacked out roof rails and window surrounds provide that sinister look. Another side marker. But overall, it looks really good. I like the way they stretched it out. Again, the overall length is 203 inches, which is roughly 10 inches than the previous generation, right? Your wheelbase is 120.9 inches as well. And again, 7.75 inches of ground clearance. Let's take a look at the back. You'll notice we have some C-shaped LED taillights that kind of mimic the C-shaped daytime running lamps that we found up front. And then we have the GMC badge and the AT4 badge, and then a quad exhaust outlet, which looks pretty cool. Okay, so let's take a look at the storage capability. So of course we have a power lift gate. So with the third row up, you're looking at roughly 23 cubic feet of storage. I had the third row dropped, so that's giving us 57 cubic feet of storage. And then with the second row dropped, you're looking at 97 cubic feet of storage. Now, while we're back here, you'll see that the third row does have cup holders and a USB Type-C port. That rain is really starting to come down. And then, of course, we have a huge panoramic roof. We'll get to that in a second. All right, so I'm gonna come out the rain and take a quick look at the interior here. It wasn't supposed to rain for another few hours, guys. So you can see we have a leatherette finish with contrast stitching, and then a denim material here that looks pretty cool, provides some contrast there as well. AT4 badge. Let me start this thing up. Get out the rain. Okay, so we have power adjustable seats on the driver's side and passenger side. They're 8-way adjustable. And then a massive panoramic roof covered in pollen and water at the moment. But overall, the interior cabin is nice. So you'll notice this large touchscreen display system here, roughly 16 inches. We had the wireless Apple CarPlay. I like how they're starting to put the wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in their cars now. There are a couple other models that don't have them that they do them in, but it's nice to see that they're incorporating the wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So the other models, that we've reviewed from GMC, some of them do not have this. They have their own system and they want you to use their system, but I like the mirroring systems that everybody uses. The top of the dash is covered in injection molded material with contrast stitching. Looks nice, soft to the touch. The steering wheel, of course, looks nice and modern with this tri-spoke design, the GMC logo in the middle, your thin film transistor display. Of course, this does have Super Cruise on it as well. And we also have a head-up display system. The door panels, your unlock and lock buttons, dark chrome accents and ambient lighting throughout the cabin, your window controls, one touch. I like that. That's for the front. Driver's side only is the one touch up and down. Every other window is like one touch down. I wish they just incorporated that in all 4 windows. But overall, this is spacious up here. You're looking at about 44 inches of legroom as well. Wireless charging, 2 USB ports, 1 type C, 1 type A, 2 cup holders, some additional storage here. Overall, it's pretty much what you would expect from a mid-size SUV. The seats are fairly comfortable, 3 levels of heating and cooling, no massage features. Again, this is around the $60,000 price point. So you know what to expect. All right, so let's take a look at the second row and then take this thing out on the street before it starts raining too hard. All right, so let's hop to the second row. All right, so the second row, quite spacious. I'm sitting behind myself. Right, we're looking at 41 inches of legroom back here, and then the third row finish you off with 32 inches of legroom. But you have your own air conditioner system here, heated seats, 2 USB Type-C ports, storage on the bottom of the center console. Same finishes on the seats that you saw up front. Of course, you have the armrest here as well. Everything looks nice to the touch, and of course, a lot of lighting coming in from that panoramic roof, which is also nice. So that's a good view of the front dash from the second row. Just gives you an idea of the layout. I like the nice and modern layout of this vehicle. It feels like the interior could be in a car that is $20,000 more than this. So I like what they did with the interior design. Overall, it looks good. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this out on a quick test drive and see how it handles, see how it feels, and see what noises come into the cabin, if any. Is this a quiet ride? Is this something you could take on a long road trip? And see if it has enough power. Let's check it out. All right, so taking the GMC Arcadia out for a test drive. I had this thing for a few days, and I noticed that it's obvious to me that this is a 4-cylinder power plant, meaning that I wish it had just a little bit more power. I believe the previous generation offered a naturally aspirated V6 along with a turbo 4-cylinder. But this one, we just had the turbo 4-cylinder. And again, sometimes it just feels like there's not adequate power. We do have it connected to an 8-speed transmission. And like I said, 0 to 60 is in roughly 7 seconds. But sometimes I just wish I had just a little bit more power to have a little bit more confidence when I needed to accelerate as much as I want to, right? The noise from the 4-cylinder definitely doesn't sound as sweet as a V6. A little bit of that does come into the cabin, but overall it is something that you can live with, you can work with. You're getting a lot of other things for the price point of this vehicle, quite frankly. Like I said, the interior is really where this vehicle shines, especially when compared to the previous generation. It just knocks it out the park. The suspension feels relatively soft. It's able to absorb a lot of the bumps and imperfections in the road without too much fuss. And again, to go with it, we do have the 18-inch wheels since this is the AT4 model, and it sits a little bit higher than the other Arcadia trims since this one is kind of geared towards the off-road capability. Right, so right off the bat, I noticed that, for example, I need the defroster or the defogger, whatever you want to call it. And I was able to use a physical key to activate that. So the infotainment system here works pretty well as long as, you know, you have a mix of physical buttons along with the touchscreen. So not everything is totally reliant on the touchscreen. Your air conditioner system or HVAC system, whatever you want to call it, you have a nice mix where you're able to use both the touchscreen and analog buttons here. So I like keeping it old school. It gives me, you know, a sense of feedback, you know, when I'm actually using an actual button. But overall, the ride is smooth, and I do like the mix of tech in this vehicle. So it's like if you don't want to spend Yukon money or for a full-size Denali or something like that, this is a nice midpoint for around 60 grand, you know, because in today's market, a full-size SUV is easily going for over 100 grand. You're getting a lot of the tech that's in those full-size SUVs trickle down to the Arcadia level, right? So the head-up display, the heated and ventilated seats, the large touchscreen display for your infotainment system, heated steering wheel, Super Cruise, massive panoramic roof. You're getting a lot of the goodies that we at some point only saw in the full-size SUVs trickle down into this mid-size point, which makes it really competitive. Like I said, this is a competitive segment, especially with vehicles such as the Telluride and the Palisade, or the, you know, the Toyota Highlander, all competing in this segment. You know, it's fierce, and I think GMC is doing well and heading in the right direction in terms of the features that they've crammed into the Arcadia and offering it at different trim levels as well. Now, I would like to try the Denali trim level myself to see, you know, in terms of luxury, is that trim level a significant jump from the Arcadia and the other models? Or is it just, you know, using the Denali name to sell additional product? Now, I suspect since we just reviewed the Sierra Denali EV, they didn't come to play on that. And I imagine on the Denali trim level of the Arcadia, that one's going to be pretty good too. So really my only complaint on this car is the power plant. I wish a V6 was offered, or I wish that that four-cylinder felt a little bit smoother, you know, didn't have as much noise coming into the cabin. Aside from that, overall, this is a nice cabin to be in. I think the cabin is easily my favorite feature about this vehicle. So sorry about the rain. Try to get this one wrapped up before it really started coming down. Unfortunately, we weren't successful this time around. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments section. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm Ben Wayne, the automotive reviewer that YouTube deserves. I'll catch you guys in the next one.